Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to play Tomb Detectives to unpack a literal 3,000-year-old cold case. We are talking about the story of a forgotten pharaoh, a frantic ancient cover-up, and what ultimately became the greatest archaeological discovery in history. So get comfortable and let's unravel this mystery. To really appreciate the scale of this, picture this. You're in the hot, musty Egyptian desert, standing right in front of a plastered doorway, deep in the Valley of the Kings. Until that exact moment, no human had seen inside this royal resting place for 3,000 years. The explorers standing there had absolutely no clue what was waiting on the other side. So it's November 26, 1922. The British archaeologist Howard Carter chips this tiny little hole in that doorway, holds up a flickering candle to peer inside, and just sees the impossible. As his eyes adjusted, he famously noted how details emerged slowly from the mist: strange animals, statues, and literally everywhere, the unmistakable glint of gold. Section 1. Unearthing a Lost King. Who was Tutankhamun? Before we explore the glittering crime scene of that tomb, we gotta know who our subject actually was, and step back into the incredibly tumultuous world he lived in from about 1333 to 1323 BC. Basically, Egypt was in the middle of a massive religious tug-of-war. Tut's dad, Akhenaten, had completely upended society. For thousands of years, Egyptians worshipped around 2,000 gods. Akhenaten threw all of that out and forced everyone to worship just one god, the sun, Aten. People secretly hated this. We actually know this because archaeologists have found tiny statues of the old gods hidden in regular people's houses. But when 9-year-old Tut takes the throne, he immediately reverses course, pouring money into repairing the old temples and bringing back the traditional gods. And this is where it gets super personal. Tut was originally named Tutankhamun. Notice those last syllables? They literally honored his father's controversial sun god. By changing his name to Tutankhamun, he was making a massive political statement to restore the old ways. And while he's doing all this heavy political lifting, you have to remember, he's just a kid. He's growing up, going on hunting trips, learning to ride horses, driving chariots, and training in the military. But here's the tragic part. His reign was incredibly short. He dies around the age of 19, leaving no children behind. And this brings up one of the absolute biggest mysteries of our cold case. What actually killed him? Experts are still analyzing the remains today, trying to figure out if it was a devastating chariot crash, a mosquito-borne illness, a severe bone disease, or maybe a deadly combination of the whole shebang. Which leads us to Section 2, Erased from History, the rushed burial in the Valley of the Kings. What happens next is crucial. Because Tut left no heir, his advisor, a guy named Ai, takes the throne. And immediately, something is very off with the boy king's burial. Usually, pharaohs got massive, sprawling tombs cut deep into the rock. Tut, however, was shoved into an unusually small tomb. The evidence points to an unbelievably rushed job. There are literally spots of mold on the painted walls inside the tomb. That proves the workers sealed the room shut before the paint even had time to dry. Why the huge rush? Well, some experts think Tut was building a grand tomb but died too soon. Others suspect foul play, that Ai might have actually swapped tombs, stealing the grand one for himself and tossing the young king into a smaller, damp hole in the wall. Let's track how this plays out over time. After he dies in 1323 BC, Tut's successors actively try to scrub him and his controversial dad from history entirely. They strike their names from the official king lists, they smash their statues, and it worked flawlessly. Just 150 years later, workers building a tomb for Ramses VI build it almost directly on top of Tut's tomb, completely oblivious. Tut was perfectly, entirely lost under the sand. Until 1917, when Howard Carter enters the chat. Section 3. The Tomb Detective. Howard Carter's last chance. Carter and his wealthy British backer, Lord Carnarvon, were convinced Tut's tomb was still out there somewhere, even though everyone else thought the Valley of the Kings was totally tapped out. They spent years meticulously digging down to the bedrock, finding only agonizingly tiny clues: a stray cup, a jar, a single piece of linen with Tut's name on it. They're burning through cash, and Carnarvon is finally ready to pull the plug. But Carter begs for just a few more months. And incredibly, 3 days into that final, last-ditch effort, boom, a breakthrough. They uncover a single step, buried deep in the sand. They frantically clear the debris, revealing more stairs leading down, straight to a plastered doorway stamped with Tutankhamun. But there was a catch. The plaster showed clear signs of being broken into and resealed by ancient valley guards. Had they just spent years digging up an empty, looted room? Section 4, Treasures of the Afterlife, Unpacking the Evidence. As we know from Carter's quote earlier, the room was definitely not empty. Even though ancient looters had broken in twice, looking for quick jewelry to pawn, the ancient valley guards caught them, tossed the dropped items haphazardly back inside, and resealed the door. Because of that, the tomb was almost completely intact. And the sheer scale of what was in there is staggering. Egyptians believed the afterlife was just life 2.0, so you literally had to pack for eternity. Just the first room, the antechamber, had over 600 everyday and ceremonial items. We're talking clothes, food, chariots, board games, golden beds shaped like animals. They even packed magical statues called shabtis that were supposed to come to life and serve the pharaoh. Carter was so careful it took him over 2 months just to catalog this one room. Then, he opens the burial chamber. And finding the king was basically like opening the ultimate, priceless Russian nesting doll. First, a massive golden shrine taking up almost the whole room. Inside that, 3 more nested shrines. Inside that, a stone sarcophagus. Inside that, 3 golden coffins nested tightly together. And finally, in the very center, the mummified body of the boy king. Amazingly, Tut actually still rests in a glass case inside that exact burial chamber today. But wait, it doesn't stop there. Beyond the burial chamber was the treasury, which had a smaller shrine for Tut's mummified organs, fiercely guarded by a statue of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead. Then they cleared a final room called the Annex, which was just stuffed to the ceiling with over 2,000 additional items. All told, Carter spends nearly a decade carefully removing and cataloging an astounding 5,000+ objects from this one small tomb. 5,000! The sheer wealth of it sparked an absolute global frenzy. People everywhere were glued to newspapers and radios. The Tut mania was so real, but even U.S. President Herbert Hoover got caught up in it and named his dog King Tut. Section 5, The Curse and Legacy. The Price of Discovery. Of course, right alongside all that glitz and global fascination, a much darker rumor started making the rounds. One that completely hijacked the public's imagination, the infamous Pharaoh's curse. So let's separate fact from fiction here. The rumors blew up because Lord Carnarvon, the guy funding it all, died from an infected mosquito bite just 6 months after the tomb opened. Throw in some bizarre bad luck like Carter gifting a tomb object to a friend, only for that friend's house to mysteriously burn down, get rebuilt, and then immediately flood. It felt totally supernatural. But the reality? Howard Carter, the guy who actually chipped the hole and breathed in that 3,000-year-old air first, lived completely unharmed for another 17 years. The curse was a myth, but the legacy, that was very real. Which brings us to a final, lingering thought. Tut's successors tried with everything they had to erase him from history, striking his name and hiding his tomb. But did their desperate attempt to bury his legacy actually secure his immortality? Think about the irony here. Because they tried so hard to hide him, they inadvertently protected him from the tomb raiders that stripped every other pharaoh clean. They left us the most intact royal Egyptian tomb ever found, giving us unmatched insights into ancient culture and transforming a forgotten 19-year-old kid into the single most famous pharaoh in human history. It's an incredible twist of fate, isn't it? Thanks for hanging out for this explainer, and keep questioning history.